Clarice Beaufort, a black woman in her 40s, was calmly driving through an upscale residential neighborhood of the city. She was still savoring the excitement of her recent appointment as Chief Judge of the State Court of Appeals. It was the culmination of years of hard work and dedication to justice, and she was preparing to launch an ambitious series of reforms aimed at eradicating abuses of power and racial inequality. That day, she felt powerful and ready to effect change. As she turned onto a street lined with grand villas and manicured gardens, a police officer suddenly stopped her. The officer, a white man named DuPont, approached her car with a noticeable air of arrogance. Clarice immediately sensed that this stop wasn't due to a traffic violation. Over the years, she had learned that even when one achieves positions of authority, the color of one's skin can still shape perceptions. She took a deep breath and prepared to handle the situation calmly. "Do you know why I stopped you?" DuPont asked sharply, casting a disdainful glance at the luxury sedan she was driving. Clarice responded with impeccable composure. "No, officer, I don't. Have I broken any laws?" DuPont's face tightened. "Is this car yours?" he asked, his tone tinged with suspicion. Clarice instantly recognized the insidious nature of the question, meant to cast doubt on her legitimacy. She was aware that few black women were seen driving high-end cars in such affluent neighborhoods, let alone holding a position as prestigious as hers. Yet she betrayed no emotion as she calmly handed over her documents. "Yes, it's mine," she replied, providing the papers that proved her ownership. Instead of simply verifying the documents and letting her go, DuPont pressed further, insinuating that the car might have been stolen. "How does someone like you afford a car like this?" he asked cynically. At that moment, Clarice understood that he didn't see her as a judge or a respectable woman, but simply as a black woman out of her place. Despite the humiliation, she remained unflappable, even as the officer ordered her out of the vehicle for a search under the curious and accusatory gazes of passers-by. The scene was uncomfortable, and the tension palpable. But Clarice was not one to be intimidated. Maintaining her calm, she discreetly made a silent phone call, a call she knew would change the course of events. She reached out to a key figure in the judicial system, Attorney General Antoine Delacroix, a longtime ally and influential figure. Delacroix not only respected Clarice's impeccable track record, but also shared her vision of reforming institutions to combat systemic discrimination. Their collaboration had been instrumental in her rise, and their mutual respect was unwavering. After a few rings, Delacroix's familiar voice came through. "Clarice? What's happening?" he asked. She succinctly explained the situation, laying out the facts without emotion. "It seems Officer DuPont has doubts about my legitimacy in driving this car. He's questioning my ownership despite the evidence I've provided." Outraged by the officer's audacity, Delacroix responded immediately. "I'll handle this right away. Stay there. I'll expedite things." Minutes later, DuPont received a call on his radio. His face froze as he listened to the instructions. His arrogance visibly wavered, replaced by palpable hesitation. Delacroix had swiftly escalated the matter to the highest levels, and the officer could sense the walls closing in on him. The unease grew as he realized the situation was slipping out of his control. Standing beside her car, Clarice observed the subtle shift in DuPont's demeanor, fully aware that her call had placed him in a precarious position. In moments, DuPont turned back, visibly contrite, and handed her papers over without a word. The silent dominance of the moment was evident. Despite the provocation, Clarice had maintained control, and the intervention of an influential ally had put the officer in his place. As DuPont walked away, visibly troubled, Clarice stood still for a moment, reflecting on what had just transpired. While her network and influence had allowed her to navigate this humiliating situation, she knew that thousands of other black men and women wouldn't have had the same opportunity. The weight of that reality pressed heavily on her. This wasn't just a traffic stop. It was an abuse of power steeped in racial prejudice, and she couldn't let it go unchecked. Clarice made a resolute decision. She wouldn't allow DuPont's behavior to go unpunished. This random encounter symbolized everything she had fought against throughout her career. She would take legal action against him. That evening, after drafting a detailed report of the events, Clarice contacted a team of lawyers specializing in civil rights. She wasn't just the chief judge of a prestigious appellate court. She was also a determined woman committed to using every resource at her disposal to combat discrimination. Her legal action wouldn't be personal. It would send a powerful message against systemic injustice. In a meeting with her legal team, Clarice made her objectives clear. This isn't just about my humiliation. It's about the daily injustices others face without the means to fight back. We must expose the abuse of power, racial discrimination, and harassment this officer engaged in. Her lawyers, aware of the case's complexity and visibility, got to work. They knew the case would attract attention, not only because of Clarice's status, but also because it highlighted a broader societal issue. When the day of the hearing arrived, the courtroom was packed with journalists, civil rights advocates, and onlookers. The case of DuPont versus Clarice Beaufort had garnered national attention, transforming what began as a routine traffic stop into a landmark battle against racial discrimination and abuse of power. Clarice Beaufort, surrounded by her lawyers and a support group, sat in the courtroom with quiet determination. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as the racial discrimination case was about to begin. Clarice's attorney, Nicholas Dubois, was the first to speak. He presented clear and detailed arguments, highlighting the unacceptable behavior of Officer DuPont and how he had questioned Clarice's legitimacy solely based on her skin color. Dubois emphasized that this incident was symptomatic of a broader issue of systemic discrimination within law enforcement. At one point, Dubois urged the court to examine DuPont's past, a critical aspect the legal team had meticulously prepared. By presenting evidence and testimonies from previous cases of abuse of power and discrimination involving DuPont, he revealed a damning record of similar accusations. The documents laid out details of multiple prior incidents where DuPont had been accused of racism, abuse of power, and inappropriate conduct toward citizens, particularly people of color. These revelations had an immediate effect on the courtroom. Murmurs and indignant reactions spread among the audience, while journalists scribbled notes frantically. Clarice, observing the courtroom's reaction, felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that the truth was finally being uncovered, but sadness at how deeply rooted these behaviors were within the system. Officer DuPont, seated in the defendant's box, appeared visibly shaken. His typically confident demeanor had faded. He tried to compose himself and maintain a semblance of dignity, but the harsh spotlight on his record left an indelible mark. His career, already tainted by allegations of misconduct, now seemed irreparably damaged. When the judge, after hearing the evidence and testimonies, announced that a verdict would be rendered following deliberations, it was clear the case had left a significant impact. DuPont knew the evidence against him was overwhelming, and his professional future was now in jeopardy. The final verdict, delivered a few days later, was a resounding condemnation. DuPont was found guilty of abuse of power and racial discrimination. His career as a police officer was immediately suspended, and he faced additional disciplinary actions. For Clarice, this victory was not just about personal justice. It marked a significant step in the fight against systemic abuses and discrimination. She knew that every battle won contributed to deeper change within the system. As the DuPont case came to a close, Clarice received messages of support and congratulations from colleagues, allies, and members of the community. The recognition of her courage and commitment to justice stood as a testament to the profound impact of her actions. Clarice continued her mission of reform with renewed determination, aware that the road to equality was still long but that each victory, no matter how small, was a step toward a fairer future. In the realm of stories, this saga is a tribute to those who, in the face of adversity, choose to fight for a more equitable world. It invites us to reflect on the values we uphold and the actions we take to build a society where every individual is treated with respect and dignity. Thank you for joining us in this deep exploration of justice and resilience. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that highlight the fight for truth and equality. See you soon for more transformative and inspiring tales.